The words from my own son cut through me like a knife. Mom, we think it's time you move to a memory care facility. Your dementia is getting worse and it's not safe for you to live alone anymore. I stared at David, my 45-year-old son, who I'd raised as a single mother after his father died, and felt my world crumble. Dementia? I was 68 years old, sharp as a tack, and had just finished balancing my investment portfolio that morning. David, I don't have dementia. I'm perfectly fine. Mom, you called me 3 times yesterday asking the same question. You forgot our lunch appointment last week, and Jessica found you wandering around the grocery store looking confused. Jessica, my daughter-in-law of 2 years, standing behind David with tears in her eyes and a look of concerned sympathy that didn't quite reach her eyes. If you've ever been gaslit by your own family into questioning your sanity while they plotted to steal your life's work, stay with me, because what I discovered about Jessica's systematic campaign to have me declared mentally incompetent will make you question every concerned family member you've ever trusted. My name is Dorothy. I'm 68 years old, and this is how I discovered that some people will destroy your mind to steal your money. Let me tell you about the 2 years I spent welcoming a woman into my family who was systematically planning to have me declared insane so she could inherit my $3 million estate. Jessica Martinez had seemed like a godsend when David introduced her 3 years ago. At 35, she was beautiful, articulate, and appeared genuinely interested in family relationships, something David had struggled with in his previous marriages. "She's different from the others, Mom," David had told me during their engagement. "Jessica really values family. She wants to get to know you, to be part of our lives." I was thrilled. After 2 failed marriages where David's wives had barely tolerated me, Jessica's enthusiasm for family connection felt like a blessing. "Mrs. Patterson," she'd said during our first dinner together, "David has told me so much about you. I hope we can become close. I've always wanted a mother figure in my life." Jessica's own mother had died when she was young, and she'd been raised by distant relatives. Her desire for family connection seemed genuine and touching. "Please, call me Dorothy, and I'd love nothing more than to have a daughter." Over the following months, Jessica made every effort to build a relationship with me. She called regularly, remembered important dates, and seemed genuinely interested in my life and history. "Tell me about David's childhood," she'd say during our coffee dates. "I want to understand the family I'm marrying into." I shared stories about raising David alone after his father's sudden death when David was 12, how I'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college, how I'd built my small accounting firm into a successful business that I eventually sold for $2.8 million. "You're such an inspiration," Jessica would say. "A single mother who built a fortune through hard work and determination." After their wedding, Jessica's attention to me only increased. She insisted on weekly family dinners, called to check on me daily, and seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. "Dorothy, are you eating properly? Are you taking your vitamins? Are you staying active?" Her care felt genuine and loving. I felt lucky to finally have a daughter-in-law who truly wanted me in their lives. But what I didn't realize was that Jessica had been researching my financial situation from the beginning. She learned about my estate, my assets, and most importantly, that David was my sole heir. "It's wonderful that you've been so successful," she'd said during one of our dinners. "David is so lucky to have a mother who's built such security for the family. I want to make sure David is taken care of. Everything I have will go to him someday." "That's so generous. Have you thought about what would happen if you ever became unable to manage your affairs?" I have a will and power of attorney documents, but I hope that won't be necessary for many years. Of course, but it's smart to plan ahead, especially with things like Alzheimer's and dementia becoming so common. At the time, I thought Jessica was just being practical. I didn't realize she was planting seeds for a plan that would unfold over the next 2 years. The changes started subtly. Jessica began making comments about my memory during family gatherings. "Dorothy, you told that story already, but it's such a kid story. We don't mind hearing it again." "Did I? I'm sorry, I didn't realize." "It's okay. It happens to all of us as we get older." She'd point out when I repeated myself, when I forgot small details, when I seemed confused about dates or times. Each incident was presented with loving concern, but the cumulative effect was to make me question my own mental acuity. "Mom, Jessica mentioned you seemed a little confused when she visited yesterday. Are you feeling okay?" I felt fine. I don't know what she means. "She said you asked her the same question 3 times and couldn't remember her answer." I didn't remember doing that, but Jessica's concerns seemed so genuine that I began to doubt myself. The incidents escalated over the following months. Jessica would claim I'd forgotten appointments we'd made, conversations we'd had, or plans we had discussed. "Dorothy, we were supposed to meet for lunch today," she'd say, calling me at home. "I've been waiting at the restaurant for an hour. I don't remember making lunch plans. We talked about it just yesterday. You seemed so excited about trying that new place downtown." I'd apologized profusely, feeling confused and embarrassed. Had I really forgotten? Was my memory starting to fail? Jessica began documenting these incidents in a journal, which she shared with David. "I'm worried about your mother. She's having more and more memory problems. I think she needs to see a doctor." What I didn't know was that Jessica had been creating false incidents and gaslighting me into believing they'd happened. She was systematically undermining my confidence in my own memory and mental abilities. The campaign intensified when Jessica suggested I see a neurologist. "Dorothy, I think it would be good for you to get a cognitive assessment," she said during one of our coffee dates, "just to establish a baseline and make sure everything is okay." "I feel fine, Jessica. I don't think I need to see a doctor." "But wouldn't it be better to know for sure? And if there are any early signs of memory issues, there are treatments that can help." David supported Jessica's suggestion. "Mom, it can't hurt to get checked out. Jessica's just worried about you." Reluctantly, I agreed to see Dr. Michael Rodriguez, a neurologist Jessica had researched and recommended. "What I discovered will make your blood boil. Sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones told by people who claim to love you, and Jessica's manipulation of my medical care would prove that she was willing to destroy my reputation and my sanity to get my money." The appointment with Dr. Rodriguez was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, and Jessica insisted on driving me there. "I want to make sure you don't get confused about the directions," she said with that concerned smile I was beginning to recognize. "And I can help explain your symptoms to the doctor." "I don't have symptoms, Jessica. I feel perfectly fine." "Dorothy, you've been having memory issues for months. It's important to be honest with the doctor about what's been happening." During the drive, Jessica coached me on what to expect during the cognitive assessment. "The doctor will ask you questions about dates, current events, and your personal history. Just try to answer as best as you can. Don't worry if you can't remember everything." Her words were meant to be reassuring, but they had the opposite effect. By the time we arrived at the doctor's office, I was anxious and second-guessing my own memory. Dr. Rodriguez was a kind, professional man who seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being. Mrs. Patterson, your daughter-in-law has shared some concerns about your memory and cognitive function. Can you tell me what you've been experiencing? I don't think I've been experiencing anything unusual. I feel mentally sharp and capable. Dorothy, interjected Jessica gently, remember what we talked about. You've been having some confusion and memory lapses. Have you been forgetting appointments or conversations? I said I have, but I don't remember forgetting anything. That's often how memory problems present, Dr. Rodriguez said. Patients don't always recognize their own cognitive decline. Jessica provided a detailed list of incidents: forgotten appointments, repeated conversations, confusion about dates and times. She presented it as a loving family member documenting concerning changes in my behavior. I've been keeping track because I'm worried about Dorothy. These incidents have been increasing in frequency over the past 6 months. Dr. Rodriguez administered a series of cognitive tests, memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, and questions about current events and personal history. I performed well on most of the tests, but Jessica's constant presence and her documented concerns seemed to influence the doctor's interpretation of my responses. Mrs. Patterson, your test results are mostly within normal ranges, Dr. Rodriguez said after reviewing my performance. However, given the behavioral changes your family has observed, I'd like to schedule some additional testing. What kind of testing? Brain imaging and more comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation. Sometimes early-stage dementia doesn't show up on basic cognitive tests. I left that appointment feeling confused and worried. Was I really experiencing cognitive decline that I wasn't aware of? Women 30 to 40s who know how pain hides in silence. Was Jessica right to be concerned? What I didn't know was that Jessica had been researching the symptoms of early-stage dementia and had carefully crafted her reports to match the diagnostic criteria. She'd also been in contact with Dr. Rodriguez's office before my appointment, providing background information that painted me as a woman in denial about her cognitive decline. Mrs. Patterson's family is very concerned, Jessica had told the nurse. She's been having significant memory problems, but she doesn't seem to recognize them. They're worried she might be a danger to herself. The follow-up tests were scheduled for the following month, and Jessica continued her campaign of documenting my supposed cognitive failures. She'd call me and then claim I'd forgotten our conversation. She'd make appointments and then say I'd missed them. She'd ask me questions and then insist I'd given different answers than I remembered giving. Dorothy, yesterday you told me you were born in 1954, but today you said 1955. That's the kind of confusion we need to tell the doctor about. I'm sure I said 1955 both times. That's my birth year. I wrote it down when you said it. I'll show the doctor my notes. Jessica's notes became a comprehensive record of my supposed cognitive decline. She documented every conversation, every interaction, every moment of supposed confusion or forgetfulness. What made her manipulation so effective was that she presented it all with loving concern. She never seemed angry or frustrated with my memory problems, just worried and caring. I know this is hard for you to accept, she'd tell David, but your mother is clearly declining. We need to start thinking about her safety and her future care needs. David, who lived across the country and only saw me during occasional visits, began to believe Jessica's reports about my condition. Mom, Jessica says you've been having more problems, he'd say during our phone calls. Are you sure you're okay living alone? I'm fine, David. I don't know why Jessica thinks I'm having problems. She's just worried about you. She loves you and wants to make sure you're safe. The second round of medical tests was more extensive and invasive. Brain scans, blood work, and hours of neuropsychological testing designed to detect even subtle cognitive impairment. Jessica accompanied me to every appointment, providing her documented observations to each specialist. Mrs. Patterson has been experiencing increasing confusion and memory loss, she'd tell the doctors. Her family is very concerned about her ability to live independently. The test results were mixed. Some showed normal cognitive function for my age, while others suggested possible early-stage cognitive decline. The results are inconclusive, Dr. Rodriguez told me during our follow-up appointment. Some indicators suggest possible early dementia, but others are within normal ranges. What does that mean? It means we need to continue monitoring your condition. Given your family's observations of behavioral changes, I'm recommending regular follow-up appointments and consideration of supportive care options. Supportive care options? Assistance with daily activities, medication management, and eventually residential care if your condition progresses. Jessica squeezed my hand sympathetically. We just want to make sure you're safe and well cared for, Dorothy. But I was beginning to suspect that Jessica's definition of well cared for might be very different from mine. The truth was more devastating than I imagined. Have you ever had someone systematically convince you that you're losing your mind while they're the one actually manipulating reality? That's exactly what Jessica did to me for 18 months, and she was so skilled at it that I almost believed I was going insane. The medical appointments had given Jessica's campaign an air of legitimacy. Now she had doctor's reports and test results to support her claims about my cognitive decline, even though those reports were based on her fabricated observations. Dorothy, Dr. Rodriguez thinks we should start considering your long-term care options, she said during one of our coffee dates. He's concerned about your safety living alone. But I feel fine. I'm managing everything perfectly well. Sweetheart, that's part of the disease. People with early dementia often don't recognize their own limitations. Jessica had become an expert on dementia symptoms and terminology. She spoke with authority about cognitive decline, using medical language that made her sound knowledgeable and credible. The doctor explained that anosognosis is common in dementia patients. It's when people lose the ability to recognize their own cognitive impairment. I don't have cognitive impairment. Dorothy, yesterday you called me asking where you put your car keys, and when I arrived to help you look for them, they were in your hand. I stared at her, trying to remember this incident. Had that really happened? I couldn't recall calling Jessica about my keys, but her description was so specific and detailed. I don't remember that. That's exactly what I mean. You're having memory problems, but you don't remember having them. This became Jessica's standard response to my denials. Every time I questioned her version of events, she'd explain that my inability to remember was proof of my cognitive decline. The incidents she described became more frequent and more concerning. According to Jessica, I was leaving the stove on, forgetting to lock my doors, getting lost in my own neighborhood, and repeating the same conversations multiple times. I'm really worried about you living alone, she told David during one of their phone calls, which she put on speaker so I could hear. Yesterday, I found her standing in her kitchen at 2 a.m., fully dressed, saying she was waiting for you to pick her up for lunch. I never did that. Dorothy, you were so confused. You insisted that David was coming to get you, even though he lives in California. David's voice came through the phone, filled with concern. Mom, this is exactly what Jessica's been telling me. You're having episodes that you don't remember. I'm not having episodes. The fact that you don't remember them is part of the problem, Jessica said gently. That's why we need to start thinking about getting you more help. Jessica began suggesting that I needed supervision and assistance with daily activities. I think we should hire a caregiver to check on you during the day, just someone to make sure you're eating properly and taking your medications. I don't need a caregiver. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Dorothy, you forgot to take your blood pressure medication for 3 days last week. I had to remind you. I take my medication every morning with breakfast. You think you do, but you're forgetting. I've been checking your pill organizer and there are missing doses. I checked my pill organizer that evening and found that she was right. There were missing doses, but I was certain I'd been taking my medication regularly. Was I really forgetting? Or was someone removing pills to make it look like I was forgetting? The thought that Jessica might be manipulating physical evidence seemed paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Jessica also began involving other family members and friends in her campaign. "I'm so worried about Dorothy," she'd tell my neighbors. "She's been having memory problems, and I'm concerned about her safety." "Dorothy seems fine to me," my neighbor Mrs. Chen would say. That's the thing about dementia. People can seem normal in casual interactions, but they're struggling with daily tasks and decision-making. Jessica's explanations were always reasonable and medically informed. She never seemed malicious or self-serving, just a concerned daughter-in-law trying to help an aging family member. She began documenting everything in a detailed journal that she shared with David and the doctors. March 15th, Dorothy called asking if I knew where her purse was. Found it in the refrigerator. March 18th, Dorothy forgot our lunch appointment and seemed confused when I called to check on her. March 22nd, found Dorothy's front door unlocked at 11 p.m. when I stopped by to check on her. The journal painted a picture of a woman in rapid cognitive decline, someone who was becoming a danger to herself and needed immediate intervention. What made Jessica's manipulation so effective was that she mixed real incidents with fabricated ones. She'd take normal moments of forgetfulness that everyone experiences and present them as evidence of dementia. "Dorothy, you asked me the same question twice during our conversation today." "Did I? I don't think so." "You asked me about David's work schedule, and then 5 minutes later, you asked me the same thing again." Maybe I had repeated a question. People do that sometimes. But Jessica presented every normal human behavior as a symptom of cognitive decline. She also began making suggestions about my financial management. "Dorothy, I think it might be time to consider having someone help you with your bills and investments," she said during one of our visits. "Managing finances can become difficult when you're dealing with memory issues." I manage my finances perfectly well. But what if you forget to pay a bill or make a poor investment decision? It would be terrible if you lost money because of confusion. I'm not confused about my finances. Maybe David could help you set up automatic bill payments and work with your financial advisor to make sure everything is properly managed. The suggestion seemed reasonable on the surface, but I recognized it as an attempt to gain control over my money. I prefer to manage my own affairs. Of course, but as a backup plan, just in case. Jessica's campaign was working. David was becoming increasingly convinced that I needed help, and even I was beginning to doubt my own perceptions and memories. The constant questioning of my mental state was exhausting and demoralizing. I found myself second-guessing every decision, every memory, every interaction. Was I really experiencing cognitive decline? Was Jessica right to be concerned? Was I in denial about my own limitations? You won't believe what happened next. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals come wrapped in legal documents, and what Jessica did next would prove that her campaign to have me declared incompetent was about to enter its final, most dangerous phase. 6 months after the medical evaluations began, Jessica suggested that we meet with an elder law attorney to discuss my future care needs. "Dorothy, I think it would be good for us to understand your legal options," she said during one of our coffee dates. "If your condition progresses, we want to make sure you have the right protections in place." "What kind of protections?" "Things like updated power of attorney documents, healthcare directives, and maybe a guardianship arrangement if you become unable to make decisions for yourself." The word guardianship sent a chill through me. I knew that guardianship meant someone else would have legal authority to make decisions about my life, my money, and my care. I don't think I need a guardian. I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. Of course you are, right now, but the doctor said your condition might progress, and we want to be prepared. Jessica had researched elder law attorneys and found one who specialized in guardianship cases involving dementia patients. Attorney Patricia Williams has a lot of experience with families dealing with cognitive decline, Jessica explained. She can help us understand all our options. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, and Jessica insisted on accompanying me. I want to make sure all your concerns are addressed, she said, and I can help explain the medical situation to the attorney. Attorney Williams was a professional woman in her 50s who seemed knowledgeable about elder law issues. Mrs. Patterson, I understand you've been experiencing some cognitive changes. Your daughter-in-law has shared some concerns about your ability to manage your affairs. I don't believe I'm having cognitive problems, I said. I feel mentally sharp and capable. That's not uncommon, Attorney Williams replied. Many people with early-stage dementia don't recognize their own limitations. Jessica provided the attorney with her detailed journal of my supposed cognitive failures, along with the medical reports from Dr. Rodriguez. As you can see, Jessica said, Dorothy has been having increasing problems with memory, confusion, and decision-making. We're concerned about her safety and her ability to manage her financial affairs. Attorney Williams reviewed the documents with a serious expression. Based on what I'm seeing here, it does appear that Mrs. Patterson may benefit from some form of legal protection. What kind of protection? I asked. There are several options. We could update your power of attorney documents to give your family more authority to help with financial and medical decisions. Or, if your condition continues to decline, we might need to consider a guardianship proceeding. I don't want anyone else making decisions for me. Of course not, Jessica said soothingly. We're just exploring options. Maybe we could start with updated power of attorney documents that would give David limited authority to help with certain decisions. Attorney Williams drafted new power of attorney documents that would give David broad authority over my financial and medical affairs. These documents would allow David to manage your investments, pay your bills, and make healthcare decisions if you become unable to do so yourself. But I am able to do those things myself. For now, yes, but if your condition progresses, these documents would ensure that someone you trust can step in to help. The documents were presented as a precautionary measure, but I recognize them as a way for Jessica and David to gain control of my estate. I need time to think about this, I said. Of course, Attorney Williams replied, but given your medical situation, it would be wise not to wait too long. If your cognitive abilities decline further, you might not be legally competent to sign these documents. Jessica reinforced this urgency during our drive home. Dorothy, I know this is overwhelming, but the attorney is right. If you wait too long, you might not be able to make these decisions for yourself. I can make decisions for myself right now. Yes, but what about next month or next year? Wouldn't you rather choose who helps you while you still can? Over the following weeks, Jessica increased the pressure for me to sign the power of attorney documents. David is flying in next weekend specifically to discuss this with you. He's taking time off work because he's so worried about your situation. I didn't ask him to come. He wants to make sure you're properly protected. He loves you and wants to help. When David arrived, he seemed genuinely concerned about my well-being, but his understanding of my condition was entirely based on Jessica's reports. Mom, Jessica has been telling me about the problems you've been having. I'm worried about you living alone and managing everything by yourself. I'm fine, David. I don't know why Jessica thinks I'm having problems. She has documented dozens of incidents over the past year. Memory lapses, confusion, forgetting appointments. The doctors are concerned too. The doctors are basing their opinions on Jessica's reports. Mom, are you suggesting that Jessica is lying about your condition? I'm suggesting that she might be misinterpreting normal behavior as symptoms of dementia. Jessica and David exchanged glances, and I saw something in their expressions that chilled me. Mom, denial is a common symptom of early-stage dementia. The fact that you don't recognize your own limitations is actually evidence that you need help. I realized that anything I said in my own defense would be interpreted as further proof of my cognitive decline. Jessica had created a perfect trap. The more I insisted I was competent, the more incompetent I appeared. If you think blood is thicker than water, wait until you hear this. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources. And what I discovered about Jessica's real plan would expose her as a calculating predator who had been systematically destroying my life for money. The breakthrough came when my longtime housekeeper, Maria Santos, approached me with information that would change everything. Maria had been cleaning my house twice a week for over 10 years. She was a quiet, observant woman who spoke limited English but understood far more than people realized. "Maria Dorothy," she said one Tuesday morning after Jessica had left from one of her visits, "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Maria?" "The lady, Jessica, she do things when you not here." "What kind of things?" Maria looked nervous, as if she was afraid to speak but felt she had to. "She come to house when you go to doctor. She look through your papers, your computer. She take pictures with her phone." My blood ran cold. "Jessica has been in my house when I'm not here?" "Yes, she have key. She tell you give her key for emergency." I had given Jessica a key, but only for emergencies. I'd never given her permission to enter my house when I wasn't home. "What else has she been doing?" "She moved things, your pills, your papers. She put things in different places, and then she asks you where they are." "She's been moving my belongings?" "Yes, and she write things down in book. She write when you forget things, but sometimes you not forget. She just say you forget." Maria's broken English couldn't hide the significance of what she was telling me. Jessica had been gaslighting me by deliberately moving my belongings and then claiming I'd forgotten where I put them. "Maria, this is very important. Have you seen Jessica do anything else?" "She take pills from your medicine box. She count them and write numbers. Sometimes she take pills out." "She's been removing my medication?" "Yes. Then she tell you that you forget to take the pills." The pieces were falling into place. Jessica had been creating evidence of my cognitive decline by manipulating my environment and then documenting my supposed confusion. "Maria, would you be willing to tell other people what you've seen?" "I scared. Jessica, she say if I tell anyone, she make sure I lose job." "She threaten you?" "She say, you have dementia, and soon you go to nursing home. She say she and David will decide who work in house." Jessica had been planning for my removal from my own home and had been threatening my housekeeper to ensure her silence. "Maria, I need your help to prove what Jessica has been doing. Will you help me?" "Yes, Mrs. Dorothy, I help you. Jessica is bad woman." That afternoon, I called my old friend and former business partner, Robert Chen, who was now a private investigator. "Dorothy, I haven't heard from you in months. How are you doing?" "Robert, I need your help. I think someone is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my estate." "That's a serious accusation. Tell me what's been happening." I explained Jessica's campaign over the past 2 years, the documented incidents, the medical evaluations, the legal consultations, and now Maria's revelations about Jessica's secret activities in my home. "This sounds like a systematic attempt at guardianship fraud," Robert said. "It's more common than people realize, especially when there's significant money involved." "Can you help me prove what she's been doing?" "I can investigate, but we'll need evidence. Can you get me copies of Jessica's documentation and the medical reports?" "I think so." and I want to interview your housekeeper. Her testimony could be crucial." Robert began his investigation immediately. He installed hidden cameras in my house to document any unauthorized entries by Jessica. He also began researching Jessica's background and financial situation. What he found was shocking. "Dorothy, Jessica and David are in serious financial trouble," Robert told me during our meeting the following week. "They've accumulated over $200,000 in credit card debt, their house is in foreclosure, and David's business is failing." I had no idea. "They've been hiding their financial problems from you. Jessica has been researching your estate and calculating exactly how much they stand to inherit." Robert showed me printouts from Jessica's computer that he'd obtained through legal means. She's been researching guardianship laws, estate planning, and the process for having someone declared mentally incompetent. She's also been calculating the value of your assets and planning how to liquidate them. The evidence was overwhelming. Jessica had been planning to have me declared incompetent so she and David could gain control of my $3 million estate and use it to solve their financial problems. "There's more," Robert said. "I found evidence that Jessica has done this before." "What do you mean?" "Before she met David, Jessica was involved in a similar situation with an elderly man in Arizona. She convinced him to make her his power of attorney and then systematically drained his bank accounts. He died before anyone discovered what she'd done." "She's done this before?" "She's a professional predator who targets wealthy elderly people. She identifies vulnerable victims, gains their trust, and then manipulates them into giving her control over their assets." Robert had also interviewed Maria extensively and documented her observations about Jessica's behavior. "Your housekeeper has been keeping her own records," he said. "She's written down dates and times when Jessica entered your house without permission, moved your belongings, and removed your medication." "Maria kept records?" "She suspected something was wrong but didn't know who to tell. She's been documenting everything in case someone asked her about it." The evidence Robert had gathered painted a clear picture of Jessica's systematic fraud. She had been gaslighting me, manipulating my medical care, and planning to steal my estate through legal guardianship. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We expose her. We present this evidence to the authorities and make sure she faces criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud." "What about David? Is he part of this?" "The evidence suggests that David believes Jessica's reports about your condition. He may be an unwitting accomplice rather than a co-conspirator." "So my son really thinks I have dementia?" "Based on Jessica's manipulation, yes. She's convinced him that you're declining and need protection. The realization that my own son had been deceived into believing I was mentally incompetent was almost as painful as Jessica's betrayal. But now I had the evidence I needed to fight back and expose Jessica's lies. The next part will restore your faith in justice. Sometimes the most satisfying moments come when you watch a manipulator's carefully constructed lies crumble under the weight of evidence. And confronting Jessica with proof of her fraud would be the most empowering moment of my life. Armed with Robert's investigation and Maria's testimony, I decided to confront Jessica directly before involving the authorities. I wanted to see her reaction when faced with undeniable evidence of her crimes. I invited Jessica for our usual coffee date, but this time I had Robert and Maria waiting in the next room to witness our conversation. "Dorothy, you seem different today. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm feeling clearer than I have in months. In fact, I've been doing some investigating of my own." "Investigating what?" "Your activities in my house when I'm not there." Jessica's face remained calm, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or calculation? I'm not sure what you mean. I only come to your house when you invite me or when there's an emergency. That's interesting because Maria has been documenting your unauthorized visits for months. Maria? Your housekeeper? Dorothy, I'm concerned that you're listening to gossip from someone who might not understand what she's seeing. She understands perfectly. She's seen you going through my papers, photographing my financial documents, and moving my belongings to make me think I'm forgetting where I put them. Jessica's composure slipped slightly. Dorothy, this sounds like paranoid thinking. Have you discussed these concerns with Dr. Rodriguez? I've discussed them with a private investigator who's been documenting your fraud. Fraud? Dorothy, you're scaring me. This kind of paranoid delusion is often a sign of progressing dementia. Even when confronted with evidence, Jessica was still trying to gaslight me into believing I was mentally ill. Jessica, I know about your financial problems. I know about the foreclosure on your house, the credit card debt, and David's failing business. Our financial situation has nothing to do with you. It does when you're planning to steal my estate to solve your problems. I would never steal from you. I love you like a mother. You love my money, and you've been systematically trying to have me declared mentally incompetent so you can get control of it. Jessica stood up abruptly. Dorothy, I think you need to see Dr. Rodriguez immediately. These paranoid thoughts are very concerning. Sit down, Jessica. We're not finished. I pulled out copies of the evidence Robert had gathered, the computer records showing her research into guardianship fraud, the financial calculations of my estate value, and the documentation of her previous victim in Arizona. I know about Harold Morrison, I said, watching her face carefully. Jessica went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. The elderly man in Arizona who made you your power of attorney and then mysteriously lost $400,000 from his accounts before he died? That was a completely different situation. Was it? Because it looks exactly like what you've been trying to do to me. Jessica sat back down, her mask of concern finally slipping completely. You don't understand the situation, she said, her voice colder now. David and I are drowning in debt. We're going to lose everything. So you decided to steal my life savings. You're 68 years old, with no other family. What are you going to do with $3 million? David is your son. That money should go to him anyway. After I'm dead and competent. Not while I'm alive and competent. You won't be competent much longer. The medical reports show clear signs of cognitive decline. Medical reports based on your fabricated observations. I didn't fabricate anything. I documented legitimate concerns about your mental state. You documented lies. You moved my belongings and then claimed I'd forgotten where I put them. You removed my medication and then said I'd forgotten to take it. You created false incidents and then presented them as evidence of dementia. Jessica's facade was completely gone now. The caring daughter-in-law had been replaced by a cold, calculating woman who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to money. Prove it, she said. It's your word against mine, and the medical evidence supports my observations. Actually, it's your word against mine, Maria's, and a private investigator who's been documenting your fraud. I signaled to Robert, who entered the room with Maria and a folder of evidence. Jessica Martinez, I'm a licensed private investigator, and I've been documenting your systematic fraud against Mrs. Patterson.
Jessica looked trapped, but she wasn't ready to give up. This is harassment. Dorothy is clearly having paranoid delusions and you're enabling them. I have video evidence of you entering Mrs. Patterson's house without permission and going through her private papers, Robert replied. I have financial records showing your research into her estate and your calculations of its value. And I have testimony from Mrs. Santos about your manipulation of Mrs. Patterson's environment. Maria stepped forward, no longer afraid to speak. I see everything, she said in her accented English. You bad woman. You tried to make Mrs. Dorothy think she crazy, but she not crazy. You crazy. Jessica looked around the room, realizing that her carefully constructed plan was falling apart. David will never believe this, she said desperately. He knows his mother is declining. He's seen the medical reports. David has seen medical reports based on your lies, I said. When he learns the truth about what you've been doing, he'll understand that he's been manipulated too. You can't prove any of this in court. Actually, I can, Robert said. Elder abuse and guardianship fraud are serious crimes. The evidence I've gathered is more than sufficient for criminal charges. Jessica stood up again, this time moving toward the door. This conversation is over. Dorothy, when you have another episode and end up in the hospital, don't expect me to be there to help you. I won't be having any more episodes, I said, because you won't be around to create them. Jessica left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. She would likely try to convince David that I was having paranoid delusions and that the evidence against her was part of my mental decline. But I was ready for that fight. I had the truth on my side, and I had evidence to back it up.
What happened at our family reunion will terrify every parent watching. 6 months after exposing Jessica's fraud, I was sitting in a courtroom watching her be sentenced to 5 years in prison for elder abuse and attempted guardianship fraud, and I realized that sometimes the justice system actually works when you have enough evidence to prove the truth. The criminal case against Jessica had been straightforward once Robert presented his evidence to the district attorney. The video footage of her unauthorized entries into my home, the documentation of her research into guardianship fraud, and Maria's testimony about her manipulation of my environment had painted a clear picture of systematic elder abuse. Mrs. Martinez engaged in a calculated campaign to convince Mrs. Patterson and her family that she was suffering from dementia, Prosecutor David Chen told the jury. She manipulated Mrs. Patterson's environment, fabricated incidents of confusion, and planned to use fraudulent guardianship proceedings to steal a $3 million estate. Jessica's defense attorney had tried to argue that she was a concerned daughter-in-law who had genuinely believed I was experiencing cognitive decline. My client's observations were based on legitimate concerns about Mrs. Patterson's behavior, Attorney Patricia Williams argued. She documented these concerns out of love and worry for her mother-in-law's well-being. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury had seen the video footage of Jessica going through my papers, heard Maria's testimony about her manipulation tactics, and reviewed the financial records showing her research into my estate. The defendant's actions were not those of a concerned family member, Prosecutor Chen argued in his closing statement. They were the calculated actions of a predator who targeted a vulnerable elderly woman for financial gain. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all charges: elder abuse, fraud, attempted theft, and conspiracy to commit guardianship fraud. Judge Harrison had been particularly harsh in his sentencing remarks. Ms. Martinez, you engaged in one of the most despicable crimes imaginable: the systematic psychological abuse of an elderly woman who trusted you completely. You manipulated her environment, gaslighted her into questioning her own sanity, and nearly succeeded in having her declared mentally incompetent so you could steal her life savings. This court finds your actions to be particularly egregious given the vulnerability of your victim and the calculated nature of your crimes. Jessica showed no remorse as she was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution for the emotional distress and legal costs she had caused. But the criminal case was only part of my victory. The civil lawsuit I filed against Jessica resulted in a judgment that would ensure she could never profit from her crimes. Mrs. Patterson is entitled to compensation for the emotional distress, medical expenses, and legal costs caused by Ms. Martinez's fraud, my civil attorney explained. The judgment includes punitive damages designed to deter this type of elder abuse. The civil judgment was for $500,000, which would be collected from any assets Jessica might acquire in the future. But perhaps the most important outcome was the impact on David. Learning the truth about Jessica's manipulation had been devastating for him, but it had also opened his eyes to how he'd been deceived. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said during one of our conversations after the trial. "I can't believe I fell for her lies. I should have known you weren't developing dementia." "David, Jessica is a professional manipulator. She convinced medical professionals, attorneys, and even me at times. You're not to blame for believing her." "But I was ready to have you declared incompetent. I was going to take control of your life based on her lies." "You thought you were protecting me. That's what she wanted you to think." David had filed for a divorce from Jessica immediately after learning about her fraud. The divorce proceedings revealed the full extent of their financial problems and Jessica's desperation to access my estate. She'd been planning this for over 2 years. She researched guardianship laws, studied dementia symptoms, and even practiced her documentation techniques before she started implementing her plan. "How do you feel about her now?" "I feel like I was married to a stranger. The woman I thought I loved never existed. She was just a character Jessica played to get access to your money." David had also undergone therapy to help him process the betrayal and manipulation he'd experienced. The therapist says that Jessica used classic manipulation techniques on both of us. She isolated us from each other, controlled the flow of information, and made us doubt our own perceptions. "Are you doing better now?" "I'm learning to trust my own judgment again, and I'm learning to recognize the signs of manipulation so this never happens again." Our relationship had been strengthened by surviving Jessica's fraud. David now visited me regularly, not out of concern for my mental health, but because he genuinely enjoyed spending time with me. "I feel like I have my real mother back," he told me. "For 2 years, I thought you were declining and becoming someone different. Now I realize you were always the same person. Jessica was just making me see you through a distorted lens." The experience had also led to changes in how guardianship cases were handled in our state. The evidence from my case had been used to develop new protocols for investigating suspected elder abuse in guardianship proceedings. The Dorothy Patterson case has become a model for recognizing and preventing guardianship fraud, the district attorney told me. "Your courage to fight back has protected other elderly people from similar abuse." I've also become an advocate for elder abuse prevention, speaking at conferences and training sessions for legal professionals, healthcare workers, and family members. Elder abuse often comes from the people victims trust most. Family members, caregivers, and close friends are the most likely perpetrators because they have access and opportunity. The key is to recognize the warning signs: isolation from other family members, setting concerns about mental capacity, pressure to sign legal documents, and changes in financial management. My story has been featured in several publications and documentaries about elder abuse, helping to raise awareness about this often hidden crime. Dorothy's case shows how sophisticated these schemes can be.
The perpetrator spent 2 years building trust and credibility before implementing her fraud. She manipulated medical professionals, legal experts, and even family members into believing her lies. But the most meaningful outcome was the restoration of my independence and dignity. I was living in my own home, managing my own affairs, and making my own decisions without anyone questioning my mental capacity. "You're an inspiration," Maria told me during one of our conversations. "You show that old people are helpless. You show that we can fight back." We all have to fight back. Elder abuse thrives in silence and shame. The more we talk about it, the better we can protect vulnerable people. As I reflected on the 2-year ordeal I'd survived, I realized that Jessica's attempt to destroy my life had actually made me stronger and more determined to help others. Don't miss the conclusion, where you'll discover how losing everything I thought I wanted gave me everything I actually needed. 3 years after Jessica's conviction, I'm standing in my garden on my 71st birthday, surrounded by friends and family who've gathered to celebrate not just another year of life, but my transformation from victim to advocate to survivor. And I'm amazed by how much purpose can grow from the deepest betrayal. "Happy birthday, Mom," David says, presenting me with a cake decorated with 71 candles. "3 years ago, Jessica almost succeeded in having you declared mentally incompetent. Now look at you. You're sharper and more active than people half your age." He's right. The woman who nearly lost her independence to a guardianship fraud scheme has become a nationally recognized expert on elder abuse prevention. My story has been used in congressional hearings, featured in law enforcement training, and shared in countless presentations across the country. Dorothy, your case has literally changed how we investigate suspected elder abuse in guardianship proceedings, Detective Sarah Williams tells me, as we celebrate in the same garden where Jessica once tried to convince me I was losing my mind. The Patterson Protocol is now used by police departments nationwide when investigating guardianship fraud. The impact has been measurable. New laws have been passed requiring independent medical evaluations in guardianship cases, mandatory reporting of suspected elder abuse by healthcare providers, and stricter oversight of power of attorney arrangements. We've prevented dozens of cases similar to yours, Detective Williams continues. Your courage to fight back has protected vulnerable seniors across the country. But the statistics that matter most to me are the personal ones, the individual lives that have been saved because people recognize the warning signs I've taught them to watch out for. My advocacy organization, Seniors Against Fraud,
has grown into a national network with chapters in 25 states. We've helped over 800 elder abuse victims get justice, recover stolen assets, and rebuild their lives. The Dorothy Patterson Foundation has become the leading voice in elder abuse prevention, our executive director tells the birthday gathering. Dorothy's courage to share her story has created a movement that's protecting vulnerable seniors everywhere. The foundation now offers a 24-hour hotline for elder abuse victims, legal assistance for those seeking justice, and educational programs for families and caregivers. Every week, we get calls from people who say Dorothy's story saved their life or the life of someone they love, the director continues. Her impact is immeasurable. My book, Gaslit, How I Survived My Daughter-in-Law's Plot to Steal My Mind and My Money, became a bestseller and has been translated into 8 languages. The proceeds fund our advocacy work and victim assistance programs. Your book has educated millions of people about elder abuse, my publisher tells me. It's required reading in many social work and law enforcement programs. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition comes from other survivors who found strength in my story.
Dorothy, you showed me that it's possible to fight back, even when everyone thinks you're crazy, says Helen, a woman whose son had been trying to have her declared incompetent to access her inheritance. Your example gave me the courage to get help. I thought I was losing my mind when my caregiver started gaslighting me, adds Robert, an 82-year-old man whose story mirrors mine in many ways. But reading your book helped me realize I was being manipulated, not developing dementia. The support group that meets monthly in my home has become a family of survivors who understand each other's experiences in ways that others cannot. We've all been targeted by people who saw us as easy marks, I tell the group regularly. But we're not victims. We're survivors who refuse to be silently abused. My relationship with David has become stronger than it ever was before Jessica's betrayal. The crisis taught us both the importance of direct communication and the dangers of allowing others to interpret our relationship. I'm grateful for how close we've become, David tells me, as we watch the sunset from my garden. I hate what Jessica did to you, but I love the relationship we've built since then. David has remarried a wonderful woman named Sarah, who works as a geriatric nurse and shares our commitment to protecting elderly people. Their relationship is built on transparency and honesty. Everything his marriage to Jessica wasn't. Sarah has helped me understand what a healthy relationship looks like, David says. After Jessica's manipulation, I needed to learn how to trust my own perceptions again. Sarah has become like a daughter to me, but in a genuine way that's completely different from Jessica's calculated performance. I love you for who you are, not for what you have, Sarah tells me regularly. That's what real family relationships should be based on. The house that Jessica tried to help steal through guardianship fraud has been transformed into a center for healing and advocacy. The living room where she once documented my supposed cognitive failures now hosts support groups for elder abuse survivors. It's important to reclaim spaces that were used to harm us, I tell visitors. This house represents my victory over those who tried to destroy my independence. I've also established a scholarship fund for students studying elder law, geriatric medicine, and social work, fields that are crucial for protecting vulnerable seniors. Education is the key to prevention, I explained to scholarship recipients. The more people understand about elder abuse, the better we can protect potential victims. As I blow out my birthday candles, I think about the wish I would have made 3 years ago, simply to maintain my independence and avoid guardianship. Today, my wish is different, for continued strength to help others, and for the wisdom to use my experience to make the world safer for elderly people. "What's your secret?" asks a reporter who's covering my birthday celebration for a story about elder abuse survivors. "How did you transform such a traumatic experience into something so positive?" I had a choice. I could let Jessica's betrayal destroy my confidence and independence, or I could use it to build something meaningful. I chose to fight back, not just for myself, but for every elderly person who might face similar threats. Do you ever regret fighting back so publicly? Never. My story has prevented other families from going through what David and I experienced. That makes everything worthwhile. As the celebration winds down and my guests prepare to leave, I reflect on the journey that brought me here. 3 years ago, I was a trusting widow who nearly lost her independence to a calculated fraud scheme. Today, I'm a survivor who understands that evil exists, but who also knows that good people can triumph over it when they refuse to be silently victimized. Jessica is serving her 5-year sentence and will be deported to Mexico upon release. She'll never be able to target another elderly American for guardianship fraud. Justice was served, Detective Williams reminds me as she prepares to leave. Jessica will spend years paying for what she tried to do to you. But my victory isn't just Jessica's imprisonment. It's the life I've built from the ashes of her betrayal. It's the thousands of people who've been educated about elder abuse. It's the victims who found justice because of the investigative protocols developed from my case. It's the families who've been protected because they recognized warning signs I've taught them to watch out for.
You've turned your worst experience into your greatest contribution, David tells me as we clean up after the party. Jessica thought she was gaslighting an old woman into believing she had dementia. What she actually did was create an advocate who would spend the rest of her life protecting other vulnerable people like herself. Sometimes the people who tried to destroy us end up giving us our greatest purpose. Jessica thought she was stealing my sanity and my money, but she actually gave me a mission that's more meaningful than any inheritance could ever be. Her betrayal didn't break me. It made me unbreakable.
Have you ever been gaslit into questioning your own sanity? Have you witnessed elder abuse in your family or community? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire another person to choose courage over silence, truth over manipulation, and advocacy over victimhood.